This is Objective 8a, congruent figures, and our goal for today is I will be able to identify congruent parts of congruent figures. Congruent figures have all corresponding parts that are congruent. Again, this is the symbol for congruent. It's an equal sign with a little squiggly line above it, and it means that two figures or parts of that figure are the same, meaning the same measure. So if it's a segment, it means that those two segments have the same length, and if we're referring to an angle, it means that those two angles have the same measure. So congruent figures have all corresponding parts that are congruent. The order that the vertices are given is very important. So we notice that both the A and the D in these two congruent triangles are the first vertice that was given. So that means that angle A is congruent to angle D. Okay? Now if I extend that and I notice that AB is the first two vertices and DE is the first two vertices in the second triangle, that means that side AB is congruent to side DE. Okay? Now I notice in both of these that the second vertice that is given is the B or the E. That means that angle B is congruent to angle E. So both of those two vertices or corners of that triangle have the same measure. And again, if I extend that, BC and EF are the second segment that is congruent. So segment BC is congruent to segment EF. Okay? Now we'll focus in on what's given last. So the last vertice that's given in these two triangles is either C or F. That means that those two angles must be congruent. So we can mark them with the congruent markings. And if I wanted to extend that, it kind of looks like this. FD and CA, FD and CA are congruent parts in those two triangles. Okay? So the important thing about congruent figures is that all of the parts are congruent. Also, it's important to remember that the order really matters. So the order that the information is given to you is very important. You can't mix those orders up. Okay, here we go for example B. We have triangle LMN is congruent to triangle OPR. And we have a diagram here of two triangles that are congruent. And what we want to figure out is a couple things. We want to know which segment is congruent to segment LN. We want to know which angle is congruent to angle LMN. And we want to know which segment is congruent to RP. And we want to know which angle is congruent to POR. So, if we're going to try and figure out which parts are congruent to these four parts, the first thing that I would like to do is mark on our diagram which angles are which. So, like we did before, we're going to pay attention to the order. L and O are the first angles, or the first vertices labeled in these two triangles. So I know that L and O must be congruent. And the second vertex that is labeled is M. So I know that M in the first triangle has to be congruent to P in the second triangle. Try and do that a little bit better. And the last angle that, or vertice that's labeled in each triangle, is N and vertex R. So we have those two triangles, and now they're marked. Okay. Now, in between the red and the pink marking, LM, I can use my colors now to say that that segment has to be the same as the segment between the pink and the red angle in the other one. And my segment between the green and the red angle has to be the same on both triangles. So LN is congruent to RO. And finally, last but not least, we have between the green and the pink, we have that one there. Now you notice that these two aren't oriented the correct way, so what I can do is take the second one, and I'm going to copy and paste one, then I'm going to rotate it around so that the orientation is now correct. So I have that one. Oh, and now my labels are upside down, so I can try and turn that R around, and I'll try and turn the P around. So now I have the two triangles that are oriented the same, and what I'll do is I'll take this one and I'll just kind of shrink it down to what it was, so we don't really need that one anymore. So LN, based on our markings, is the purple 2 marks. So the one with purple and 2 marks is segment OR, and our angle LMN. Angle LMN has 2 pink marks, and the 2 light pink marks in our second triangle is OPR, angle OPR. And segment RP has 3 yellow marks, so I'll go ahead and label that one. RP and NM both have 3 yellow marks. And last but not least, POR is 1 red mark, so that's the same as angle MLN. So you can see that if you do the markings and take your time with those, the rest of it goes really quickly. And that is it for congruent figures, or congruent triangles is what our focus was. All right.